Deep within the jungles of Guatemala, archaeologists stumbled upon something that defied centuries of myth. An entire royal dynasty vanished without a trace. The temples stood silent, their altars unbroken, yet every throne lay empty. Where once divine kings commanded thousands, only the echo of wind through crumbling stone remained. No war scars, no signs of famine, only sudden, haunting absence. How could an empire so vast, so radiant in its power, dissolve overnight? Beneath layers of moss and vines, inscriptions told of celestial warnings, blood-soaked rituals, and a prophecy the rulers believed they could defy. What these scientists unearthed next would rewrite everything we thought we knew about the Maya, and the day the gods stopped listening. The team's first excavation revealed something scholars had never encountered before: a royal palace abandoned mid-ceremony. Offerings lay scattered, torches frozen in their last burn, and royal insignia placed as if in haste. The king's throne was intact, but empty. And on the floor before it, a set of footprints ended abruptly in the dust. The inscriptions etched along the chamber walls spoke of divine silence and celestial betrayal. Each layer of dirt peeled back a new question: did the kings flee? Were they taken, or had they chosen to vanish? The deeper they dug, the more the silence began to feel deliberate. A message preserved beneath centuries of roots and stone. A week later, one of the assistants uncovered a stone panel sealed beneath a layer of volcanic ash. When they finally pried it loose, the air that escaped smelled ancient, untouched. Behind it lay a mural, not of kings ascending to the heavens, but kneeling before the earth, as if pleading for forgiveness. The image contradicted everything known about Maya royal divinity. These rulers were gods on earth, or so history claimed. Yet here, they were painted as beggars before an unseen force. For the first time, the archaeologists began to suspect that the fall of the Maya kings was not caused by man, but by something they believed had turned against them. Night fell heavy over the camp that evening. Amidst the hum of insects and the hiss of distant rain, the lead archaeologist studied the translated glyphs by firelight. The text spoke of a celestial event, the night the sun wept. It described kings blinded by light, cities turned to shadow, and a god whose silence marked the end of an age. The passage was poetic, but eerily precise. It wasn't myth. It was an account. Outside, thunder rolled like a whisper from the past, and for a moment he wondered if the gods of the Maya were not gone at all, merely waiting. Days later, the discovery that changed everything emerged: a burial site not for the dead, but for the living. Skeletons were found kneeling, hands bound, faces turned toward the east. Around them, fragments of royal regalia, crowns shattered, scepters broken, as if the kings themselves had been ritually entombed in shame. The inscriptions nearby spoke of betrayal within the royal court, of omens ignored, and a final night when the gods demanded silence. The truth was no longer buried in myth. It was carved in stone, waiting for those brave enough to read its warning. The deeper they dug, the more the team uncovered. A stone altar buried beneath the royal palace bore intricate carvings depicting the heavens in turmoil. Celestial bodies, aligned in unnatural patterns, eclipses within eclipses, stars burning out in the night. The text that accompanied the altar spoke of the Great Shadow, an event that would occur when the gods' eyes turned away, when darkness overtook the sun, and when the kings would be forced to answer for their arrogance. These were not just myths. The Maya had recorded a prophecy. But the question remained: was this divine retribution, or was it a natural disaster, perceived as a sign from the gods? As the team continued to explore the ruins, they found evidence of a possible internal collapse, a schism within the Maya elite. In the back chambers of the royal palace, they discovered a set of ornate, shattered jade masks, each one representing a different ruler. their faces distorted in agony or terror. One mask in particular depicted a king whose eyes were wide with dread, his mouth open in what seemed like a silent scream. The carvings around the mask told of a prophecy of the sun's last cry, a cosmic event that was said to coincide with the final moments of the royal dynasty. The team's breakthrough came when they discovered a hidden chamber beneath the ruins of a temple. Inside, they found a set of stelae, each one representing a different ruler of the dynasty. The carvings on the stelae depicted the kings in ritualistic poses, surrounded by strange symbols, star charts, lunar eclipses, and a depiction of the Great Shadow. As they translated the texts, they realized the kings had been preparing for the event, making sacrifices and offering their power to the gods. But it wasn't enough. The Great Shadow had come, and the rulers had vanished. Had they been consumed by the darkness, or had they sacrificed themselves in an attempt to appease the gods? Late one night, as the team pored over their findings, an unexpected event occurred. A lunar eclipse, identical to one recorded in the ancient texts, began to unfold in the sky. As the moon darkened and the stars shifted, the team gathered around the campfire uneasy. The Maya believed that during an eclipse, the gods were angry, that the world was teetering on the edge of destruction. Was this a sign? Had they uncovered a warning from the past? The archaeologists couldn't help but wonder if they were on the brink of discovering something far greater than just the fall of a dynasty. The question lingered: what if the Maya had been trying to stop something far worse than the collapse of their civilization? The final discovery came when the team uncovered a series of ancient codices buried beneath a collapsed temple. The texts, though partially damaged by time, detailed the last moments of the royal dynasty, a final attempt to appease the gods through a catastrophic ritual. The codices described an event so profound that it could erase a kingdom from history. The Maya kings had sought to commune with the gods, but they had miscalculated. The ritual failed, and the gods, in their wrath, had taken them. The last entry in the codex was chilling. The kings will never return. Only shadows remain. The weight of their discoveries began to take its toll. The team, once eager to uncover the truth, now found themselves haunted by the implications of what they had unearthed. As they pieced together the fragmented codices, a pattern emerged, one that suggested a force far greater than the gods. The Maya kings had not just disappeared. They had been erased from time itself. The text spoke of the eternal void, a state where no memory remained, not even of those who had been rulers. Had they sought to transcend their mortality? Or had they been condemned? The deeper the archaeologists dug, the more they wondered. Were they on the edge of uncovering an ancient ritual? Or were they awakening something best left forgotten? That night, the wind began to howl through the jungle, carrying with it the sound of distant drums. The archaeologists had been hearing it for days, but none dared to acknowledge it. Was it just the wind, or something more? When the moon rose full over the ruins, a chilling sense of déjà vu washed over the team. The night was eerily similar to the one described in the codices. The night the Maya kings vanished. The lunar eclipse they had witnessed weeks earlier had felt like a prelude. But now, with the full moon above them, they realized the significance. The king's ritual had been tied to celestial cycles, and they had awoken something by digging too deep. Had they disturbed the tombs of the gods themselves? The team could no longer deny it. Something was happening. Something that felt supernatural. Strange occurrences began to plague their nights: unexplained footsteps in the jungle, objects found moved in their tents, and the feeling of being watched. In the ruins, they uncovered a hidden chamber deep beneath the earth. A crypt-like space where the stone walls were adorned with strange glyphs that seemed to pulse in the dim light. At the center of the room was a massive stone sculpture, a king in ceremonial garb, his face twisted in anguish. It was then that the archaeologists realized the true meaning of the prophecy. The Maya kings had not only disappeared, they had been trapped, suspended in time, waiting for someone to find them. As the days passed, the team's paranoia grew. Their dreams became vivid, of the kings standing in the shadows, of voices calling out in the night. The very ground they walked on seemed alive with an ancient power, as though the earth itself was warning them to leave. Yet they couldn't stop. They were too close now, too deep into the mystery. They began to understand that the king's ritual had been an attempt to ascend to a higher plane of existence, to escape the cycle of life and death. But something had gone terribly wrong. The kings had crossed into the eternal void, but had left their mortal forms behind, trapped in a state of timeless limbo. The goddesses had warned them, but would they heed the message before it was too late? On the final night of their expedition, the team made a horrifying discovery. Beneath the king's sculpture, they uncovered a hidden passage leading to a massive burial chamber. Inside, they found not just skeletal remains, but fully preserved bodies, the remains of the Maya kings themselves. They were seated on thrones, their eyes wide open, staring into the void. It was as though they had never truly died. The team was horrified to realize that the kings had been waiting for someone to release them from their timeless prison. The moment they touched the stone thrones, the air in the chamber grew cold, and the whisper of voices filled the room. The kings were still here, and they were not at rest. The air in the burial chamber grew thicker as the team realized the magnitude of their mistake. The Maya kings were not just figures of the past. They were still here, trapped in a limbo between life and death, waiting for the moment to return. The whispering voices, now louder than ever, filled the chamber, and the stone wall seemed to pulse with energy. The archaeologists, once driven by a thirst for knowledge, now felt the weight of their discovery. They had uncovered a forbidden truth, and it was not content to remain hidden. The very fabric of reality seemed to bend as the stones around them began to hum with a low vibration, a rhythm that matched the beating of their hearts. They had awoken something, and the price for it was becoming clear. The archaeologists scrambled to leave the chamber, but the entrance was no longer visible. The stone walls had closed in, sealing them inside. The temperature dropped drastically, their breath becoming visible in the icy air. Panic set in as the whispers grew louder, more insistent, and the walls seemed to shift around them, trapping them in an endless maze of passages. It was as if the very ruins themselves were alive, responding to the disturbance they had caused. They could no longer rely on their knowledge of the site. The jungle around them had become a twisted reflection of the ancient city, shifting and folding like a nightmare. The kings were watching, waiting for them to make their move. In a desperate attempt to make sense of the situation, the team realized they were not merely trapped in a physical space. They were caught in a cycle, the same cycle that had consumed the Maya kings. The eternal void was not a place but a state of being, a timeless prison where reality itself became distorted. They had triggered the cycle, and now, like the kings, they were bound to it. The goddesses had warned them that once the ritual was set in motion, it could not be undone. Their only hope was to find a way to reverse the effects before the ruins fully swallowed them whole. But the longer they stayed, the more they felt their minds slipping away, their memories fading like shadows in the light. In their search for an escape, they stumbled upon a final hidden chamber, one that was not depicted in the ancient maps. Inside, they found a stone altar unlike any they had seen before. It was massive, intricately carved with the faces of the Maya kings, their eyes wide open, staring directly at the archaeologists. At the center of the altar lay an ancient relic, a dark, obsidian dagger, its blade sharp and gleaming in the dim light. The moment they touched it, the ground trembled, and the entire chamber seemed to come alive with energy. The dagger was the key, the final piece of the ritual that had trapped the kings in the void. But it was also the only way to break the cycle. To free themselves, they would have to make the ultimate sacrifice. The archaeologists understood the price of breaking the cycle. The kings had been trapped in the eternal void because of their desire to transcend death. To free themselves, the archaeologists would have to complete the ritual, to take the place of the kings and become part of the void themselves. As the archaeologist raised the obsidian dagger, he understood that there was no escaping the consequences. The ruins had claimed the kings, and now they would claim him. The air around them thickened, and the whispers grew louder, reaching a crescendo. The jungle outside fell silent as time itself seemed to stop. The sacrifice had to be made, but at what cost? Weeks passed, and the expedition came to a tragic and abrupt end. The team had disappeared without a trace, their camp abandoned, their belongings left behind in haste. News of their disappearance spread quickly, but no one dared venture into the ruins. The jungle had swallowed them whole, and the city of the Maya kings remained undisturbed, until, one day, a new team of archaeologists arrived, unaware of the history that had unfolded before them. As they set foot on the same ground where the first team had vanished, the whispers began once more. The ruins were alive, remembering, waiting for the next seekers to awaken them. The cycle had begun anew. The new team began their work, digging deeper into the ruins. They found the remains of the first expedition. Scattered bones, fragments of journals, and pieces of equipment long forgotten. As they sifted through the remnants of the past, a sense of unease settled over them. But they were determined to push forward, unaware of the warnings that had been left behind. They uncovered the obsidian dagger, still gleaming, and the stone altar, undisturbed, as if waiting for the next sacrifice. And when the full moon rose high in the sky, the whispers began again, louder this time, as if the ruins were calling to them. As the night deepened, the whispers became a chant, low, rhythmic, and undeniable. The team gathered around the stone altar, drawn by a force they didn't fully understand. They had no way of knowing that they were repeating the very same steps the first team had taken. The air grew cold, and the ground trembled beneath their feet. The stone walls around them began to shift again, as though the ruins were alive, responding to their presence. The archaeologist, now holding the obsidian dagger, felt a cold shiver run through him. The cycle, it seemed, was destined to repeat. The question was not if they would be claimed, but when. As the chanting grew louder, the team could no longer deny the pull of the ritual. They could hear the voices of the previous expedition. Or was it the kings? The whispers called to them from the darkness, urging them to continue. The archaeologist raised the dagger high, his hand trembling as it caught the moonlight. The female archaeologist felt a cold hand on her shoulder, and when she turned, there was no one there. The walls around them cracked and groaned, as though the ruins were waking from a long slumber. The cycle was complete, and the price was about to be paid once more. Just as the dagger was about to fall, a sudden blinding light erupted from the stone altar, engulfing the entire chamber. The new team screamed in unison as the ground beneath them cracked open. Time itself seemed to twist and fracture as the ruins, the jungle, and the sky above became a blur of swirling shadows and light. The voices of the kings and the lost archaeologists screamed in unison, a chorus of anguish and longing. The 30-year-old male archaeologist fell to his knees, the dagger slipping from his hand as the ground swallowed him whole. And then, as quickly as it had begun, the light faded. The jungle fell silent once more. Months had passed since the disappearance of the new team, and the ruins had once again faded into the background of forgotten history. But there was a new story, a new, unexplainable phenomenon that had taken root. Across the world, reports began flooding in. Strange symbols were appearing in the most unexpected places: ancient Maya glyphs, star charts, and even fragments of the very same codices uncovered in the ruins. These mysterious markings began to appear on the walls of cities, in underground caverns, and on untouched stones in remote jungles. It was as if the knowledge the archaeologists had uncovered was somehow leaking out. Some believed it was a sign, Others thought it was madness. But the truth was undeniable. The Maya king's influence had spread, and it had infected the world in ways no one could explain. A lone scholar, a professor with a deep knowledge of Maya culture, began to investigate the connection between the strange symbols and the ancient prophecy. His journey took him deep into the archives of lost libraries and forgotten tombs. There, hidden in the folds of time, he found ancient records written by the first team of archaeologists. The documents, transcribed hastily, described the obsidian dagger, the stone altar, and the ritual. The records detailed the sacrifices, the shifting walls, and the strange energy they felt coursing through the ruins. It was as though the archaeologists themselves had become part of the ritual, not just uncovering the past, but weaving it into the fabric of the present. And with every new piece of the puzzle, the professor felt something growing in him, a sense of urgency, a sense that the Maya kings were calling to him. The professor's research soon brought him to the very place the first team had disappeared, the ruins of the Maya kings. What he found there was beyond comprehension. The site, though seemingly abandoned, was not empty. Strange, ghostly figures could be seen lingering in the shadows, their faces twisted in silent agony. The ruins were no longer just a historical site. They were a living, breathing entity, an echo of the past calling forth those who sought it. The professor could feel the weight of history pressing down on him as if the ruins themselves were feeding off his curiosity. He realized, too late, that the Maya kings had never truly been gone. They had merely been waiting for the right moment, for someone to uncover the relics, to awaken the dormant power once again. The professor found the obsidian dagger, resting on the altar as though waiting for him. The air crackled with energy as his hand moved toward it, drawn by an invisible force. He hesitated, sensing that to touch the dagger would be to cross a line, one that could never be uncrossed. But the knowledge, the promise of power, was too great. He lifted the dagger, and in that instant, the world around him fractured. Time itself bent, the stones of the ruins shifting into impossible angles, and the voices of the Maya kings filled his mind. They spoke of the eternal void, a place beyond time and space, a place where the rulers of the past could live forever, waiting for the world to return to them. The professor was no longer just a scholar. He had become part of the cycle, and in his hands, the power to break it, or to become its newest prisoner, was now his burden. As the professor held the dagger, the ruins seemed to collapse around him. The jungle twisted, the sky turned black, and the voices of the kings grew louder, suffocating him with their demand. He realized that he was not meant to break the cycle, but to become its new keeper. The sacrifice was not just for those who uncovered the ruins. It was for all who dared seek what the Maya had hidden. As the energy surged within him, he understood the cost. The Maya kings had transcended death, but in doing so, they had condemned themselves to an eternity of waiting. The professor, now fully possessed by the power of the dagger, stepped forward, joining them in the eternal void, the next link in the endless cycle of the Maya kings. Years passed, and the ruins once again faded from the public eye as new generations of scholars emerged. But the influence of the Maya kings was not content to rest in the shadows of history. Strange occurrences began to take place all over the world. People who visited the ancient sites, who studied the Maya texts, began to experience vivid dreams of the kings, of the obsidian dagger, and the unearthly ritual that bound them. These visions grew stronger, becoming a global phenomenon. The Maya kings' reach extended beyond the ruins. It now permeated the consciousness of the living. The question was no longer how to escape the cycle, but whether it could even be escaped at all. One of the leading researchers, now an older man in his 60s, had spent his life studying the Maya. Haunted by the events surrounding the first expedition and the professor who had become part of the cycle, he began to unravel a terrifying possibility. The eternal void was not confined to the ruins. It had found a way to transcend the physical world. It was not just time that had been broken. It was the very structure of reality itself. The Maya kings were no longer bound to their tombs. They had found a way to extend their rule, their power, across dimensions. The ritual was not about death. It was about control. The Maya had tapped into a force that could alter the very fabric of existence, and it was reaching out, beckoning those who sought it. The professor's warnings were not mere speculation. A new group of archaeologists, eager to discover the truth, ventured to the ruins, unknowingly crossing the threshold into the very heart of the cycle. As they began to dig, the ground beneath them trembled. But it wasn't just the earth. The walls of the ruins seemed to pulse, as if they were alive. The stars above shifted in strange patterns, echoing the celestial alignments of the Maya. The cycle was reaching its climax. The boundaries between the past, present, and future were collapsing. The new team, once excited for their discoveries, were now beginning to understand the true cost of their ambition. They were being drawn into the very fabric of time itself, bound by the king's eternal influence. As the new team ventured deeper into the ruins, they uncovered something even more unsettling: the long-lost remains of the previous expeditions. The bodies of the first archaeologists, and even the professor, were found perfectly preserved, their faces frozen in expressions of horror, as if they had been watching something unimaginable. Around them, ancient stone tablets glowed with the same symbols they had discovered in the modern world. The Maya kings had done more than create a ritual. They had created a contagion, a force that had infected not only the ruins, but the very consciousness of anyone who sought to understand it. The new team began to realize the full extent of their mistake. The eternal void wasn't just a place. It was a reality, one that they were being pulled into. The new archaeologists, now desperate, realized there was no escape. The eternal void was not just a curse for the Maya kings or the archaeologists. It was a force that consumed everything it touched. It began to unravel their perceptions of time. Days passed in an instant. Events repeated themselves. They would walk into a room, and when they looked back, the walls would have changed. The objects would have moved. The Maya kings were no longer mere figures of the past. They were manipulating the very flow of time and reality, bending the world around them to their will. The archaeologists realized too late that they were part of the ritual now, that they were the next to be trapped in the eternal void.